On top of the East Citadel Gate of Gordion, the best preserved gate that we have, and this is a good spot to discuss what Gordion meant in the ancient world and what Phrygia meant in the ancient world. Gordion was the capital of Phrygia, and this was a civilization that probably goes back to the 12th century BC, when a group of migrants came from southeastern Europe, the Balkan area, into this area of Orta Anadolu and established a settlement here. These were the Phrygians. But life here starts much earlier than that. So the earliest evidence we have for habitation is about 2400 BC, the early Bronze Age. At that point, this is no more than a village. And the same is true in the late Bronze Age, the second millennium BC, when this area is controlled by the Hittites from their capital in Hattusha. And then the Hittite Empire collapses around 1200 BC, and of course Troy is destroyed at that point, Mycenae is destroyed, Pylos, Tiryns, palace destruction all over the area. And then, after that, these immigrants from the Balkans, the Phrygians, come into this area and establish a community. And for 300 years, it remains a village. And then suddenly, we don't know why, suddenly in 850 BC, this becomes a monumental citadel. Why is that? We don't know the answer. Clearly someone or a group of immigrants came into this area with a different idea about what Gordion could be. And gradually, not even gradually, in the course of only a few decades, a monumental citadel is built. Then there is a terrible fire around 800 BC. And when they rebuild the citadel, they rebuild it 5 to 10 meters higher, using stone, earth, and clay to lift up the level of the citadel so it is just as impressive as the citadels of the Assyrians, the Urartians, and the people in the palaces in southeastern Turkey.
So we are here at the Terrace building complex. In here, we are working with the remains of original walls. We have some missing portions of the wall. So Angelo and Umur and Nahid are cutting and sizing a new block to be placed at the wall.
Günaydın, kolay gelsin. Günaydın, kolay gelsin.
So the reconstruction of this wall is completed, except for the original, the original missing area, which Angelo has selected one block there to continue the wall. We will stop before the corner because the new masonry has to key in the future masonry of this wall. So he will stop before. And he's rebuilding the area of the door jamb here.
That's great.
The injection in this area is completed, so the stones, no matter they are splay and they have no base at the moment, they've been consolidated in place. So there is no need of a cable or anything more for just.
No, it's very stable. It looks great.
Yeah, just a stone at the base, because here we could see how the first row crashed, and we found charcoal. So probably there was a wooden member that burned. So that's why the wall did this.
So this will be finished more or less
today.
When?
Today, this area. Of course, Mehmed will continue with the repointing, and then Angelo is going to start selecting more blocks for the new part, the full reconstruction.
Right. So I'm walking down this late Roman ramp placed here in the 4th century AD when Gordion was a Roman military establishment. And I'm walking past these walls of the 9th century BC. You know, when the architects at Gordion built these walls, they built them to last. So even in the late Roman period, they were still using them, even though they were over 1,000 years old at that point. You can see these early Phrygian walls here. They still rise to a height of over 4 meters, even though they were built 3,000 years ago. You can see a different phase of construction. These stones are much more regular in their carving, and they're distinctive because of the different colors that have been used. They love to do this in the Middle Phrygian period, in the 8th century BC. I'm walking toward the entrance of the city gate, and if I kept walking, I would be walking into the residential district and then ultimately to a monumental fort that was destroyed by the Persians in the 6th century BC. We're standing in front of the South Citadel Gate, which was the most important gate leading into the Citadel of Gordion. We have about 4 gates altogether. Earlier you saw the East Gate, obviously on the east side of the mound. There are 2 others, one on the west and one on the north, and perhaps more in addition. But the most important one was this one. This was in use for at least 1,200 years, from the 9th century BC at least until the 4th century AD. And as you look behind me, you're seeing 2,000 years of history. So the first gate is built here in the 9th century BC, around 850. And then it's built again during the period of Midas, probably, in the 8th century BC. Then built again in the late 6th century BC after the Persians attacked the city. And then built one more time in the late 4th century AD, when this is a late Roman military establishment. Then at a later point, in the late Middle Ages, probably the 13th century AD, you have tombs or graves that are set above the old Citadel Gate. So as you look behind me, you're seeing some excavators carefully taking the skeletons out of the tombs that were placed over this area, and also beginning to uncover the late Roman phases and the Middle Phrygian phases of this gate. It's the biggest problem we have in excavating at Gordion, because this site, like that of Troy, is 9 cities, one built on top of the other. So as you go through 1 meter of earth, you could be going through 100, 200, 300 years of history. So it's like an enormous puzzle. You see most prominently represented here, where I'm standing, is the road leading into the citadel in the late Roman period. So you can imagine carts going up here. You see these ruts in the road, or the lower sections in the road. That's where the carts and the horses would have gone into the citadel. This is also where the Persians would have entered the citadel as they attacked the city in the 6th century BC, and more importantly, when Alexander the Great came to the site in 333 BC, this is where he would have entered the citadel. So Alexander, the Persians, Midas himself would have traveled this road on which I now stand.
I'm standing in the tunnel that leads to the tomb chamber in Tumulus MM. It was excavated in 1957 by Rodney Young. It was so large he could not dig it from the top, so he dug it with a tunnel. Miners from Zongelduk dug a tunnel. It was wider than this. It has been enclosed now for visitors with stone and concrete so that it's safer, but it's also more narrow than the original tunnel. When they got to the end of the tunnel, they ran into a stone wall. And they tried to dig over it, and that didn't work. They tried to dig under it, and then they breached the wall, and all these small stones started falling out. It took them weeks for this to clear enough so they could see what you will see later at the end of the tunnel, where the wood of the oldest standing wooden building in the world was standing in front of them. So we're standing now at the northwest corner of the tomb chamber. This is as far as a visitor can come, because what everybody wants to do when they get past this fence is to touch the ancient wood, and that is not allowed, because all of the wood is damaged slightly from the fungus that attacked it for a few hundred years. But now it's safe. You can see the corner. There are other ways to present it. We're working on digital versions of the tomb. But now, again, you're looking at a building that's been standing there for 2,700 years. There is nothing like this in the world. It is the oldest standing wooden building in the world. Only one in Turkey.